Wait, what is going on here? What is going on here? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm live. I don't know what's going on here. This is ridiculous. I forgot that I was live. For some reason, it's giving me a headache. As always, there's always something that is ridiculous. And of course, today, this is for some reason not giving me what I need, which is what I usually do. So anyway, here we go. Welcome to Post-Gazette Live today. And of course, I don't know exactly what happened here, but whatever happened, it just doesn't work. It's not working the way it needs to work. And I'm not in the mood to mess with it anymore. I'm not in the mood to fight with it anymore. So we're just going to get going here, and I'll figure it out when we're done. And anyway, I think that it's a great day to talk about the NFL wildcard weekend. Clearly, there's a bunch of games that we want to talk about. The one being, that is the most important for all of us, of course, is the Steelers game. And of course, the Steelers, if you look at what they're doing, they are 9.5-point underdogs against the Ravens. Now, I've gone back and forth with this. I really have. And I think that one of the things that, if you look at the Ravens and the Steelers, most of the games are close. I know the last one wasn't close. The Steelers had a little bit of bad luck. But at the end of the day, when we look at it from that standpoint, wait a minute. You can't hear me now? This software is really starting to irritate me. How about now? Anyway, what I would tell you is this. It is really, really, really important to note. I think that I've gone back and forth with this. One of those ways is very simple to me, and that is I look at the Steelers and I say all of these Ravens games are very, very close. Very close. And so 9.5 seems like a whole lot of points. It really does. And I think that when you think about it that way, 9.5, Steelers plus 9.5, that feels like it's the bet to make, doesn't it? It feels like the game is going to be a fourth quarter game, especially you take Zay Flowers out of the mix. You got to figure that the Steelers will play a better game than they did the last time they played. These games are always field goal games, 6-point games, 7-point games. 9.5 feels like a lot of points. And so when I look at it from that standpoint, I say, yeah, I'm going to bet the Steelers. But the other part of it is it feels like, and sometimes we probably read too much into this kind of stuff, but doesn't it feel like Vegas is out there? They want you to take the 9.5, like they're putting it out there as a carrot for you. I don't know. I just don't. I mean, I look at it like that and say maybe they're trying to get you to take the 9.5. They're enticing you because they feel like it's going to be like a 17-point game or something. I don't know. If you look at the Steelers, I'll go back to the playoff game, against the Browns, where they were down 28-0, or even the game against Jacksonville with Blake Bortles, where they were down, I think 28-0 in that game as well. They somehow managed to get it back to within 10 points or whatever it was. I forget what it was. But my point is, they don't necessarily always get blown out. And so I think because of that, and the fact that they don't get blown out, it still leads me to lean somewhere into the fact that is 9.5 points. Now, what's interesting about tomorrow's game, there's a story in the Post-Gazette. You can read it on the Post-Gazette. But there's a story in the Post-Gazette about it, but this could be Najee Harris's last game. And I think that's going to be very, very interesting if it is, because it was controversial when they basically it was controversial when they drafted him in the first round. It was really controversial. And I think that 4 years later, you look at it, and those people that criticized the Steelers probably were right. By the same token, I think Najee Harris has been a reasonably good player for the Steelers. I mean, I don't know that he's been a first-round running back, but I think that he's been a guy who showed up a lot. I mean, what is going on here? Let's. I mean, what the fuck? Yeah, are we there? Let's try it. We're having all kinds of issues here today. Anyway, Najee Harris to me has been a good player for the Steelers. He really has. He's been a guy who, to me, I think is somebody who has showed up for work every day. He hasn't always been great. He hasn't always been a guy who's been a difference maker, but he always seems to have been a guy who plays hard and really, gives the Steelers what they're looking for from their running back position. I think that there are very few Saquon Barkleys and Derrick Henrys, and there are very few of those guys out there. I mean, there are some, but at the end of the day, most running backs in the NFL probably more than you even know are probably Najee Harris is somewhere in the top half of running backs, maybe even the top 15 or 18 or 20 in running backs. I mean, I would have to look at it, but my point is, I think he's legitimately fully a starting running back in the NFL. The question is just how good really is he when it comes to the NFL, when it comes to being able to make this or get the Steelers over the top. So there's a lot of people who, they're tired of Najee. I think if he leaves, he's replaceable, but I don't know that it's going to be nearly as easy to replace him as some people would love you to believe. I mean, the bottom line is they would love you to believe that Najee Harris is, a guy that's just super replaceable. But I think he's been a good player for the Steelers. Not great, but good. Is he warrant a first-round draft pick as a running back? Probably not. But I do think that he's been a better player than he probably gets credit for. And the thing about it is, it's if you look at what Jaylen Warren is, Jaylen Warren has been a good change of pace guy. But as of late, Jaylen Warren really hadn't been that guy that, there are some people that are convinced that he's better than Najee Harris. I won't go that far. I think he's a good change of pace from what they do. And I think that that's really what you got from Najee Harris over the last 4 years. So if tomorrow's his last game with the Steelers, which I don't know that it necessarily 100% has to be. I mean, if Najee Harris is going to try and, cash in and go out and try and make a bunch of money, well, I think he's going to be really disappointed, to be honest. Because at the end of the day, running backs aren't commanding that much money to begin with. And I think that the other part of it is I think he's viewed probably more like a guy that is sort of replaceable, more so than a guy who's a difference maker. Christian McCaffrey, who, is clearly a difference maker for the 49ers, he makes, let's see, $19 million a year. Jonathan Taylor makes $14 million a year. Saquon Barkley, 12 and a half. Alvin Kamara is old now, but he still makes 12.2. Josh Jacobs makes 12. Joe Mixon makes about 9.8. James Conner, boy, you want to talk about a guy the Steelers probably should have signed and just kept signing. James Conner makes 9.5. David Montgomery, 9.1. I mean, at that point, you're probably, Derrick Henry's making $8 million a year. I mean, at that point, you're probably now, looking at Najee Harris being a guy that maybe commands $6.5, $7 million. I think the Steelers would be willing to pay him that, but I don't know that he's going to settle for that. Again, that's probably what he's worth. So that's an interesting storyline for tomorrow. The other storyline, of course, for tomorrow is the big one, and that is Russell Wilson. Is he playing for his job tomorrow? I don't know that it's that cut and dry. I do think that he could help his prospects out by winning tomorrow, especially if he plays really well. But at the end of the day, I don't know that it's going to come down to just that. And so to me, he's got to play well for the Steelers to have an opportunity to win. But I think that the reality is if he doesn't win, I just can't really get to a point where I'm sitting here telling you that the Steelers are definitely going to move on from him. Because as I've said all along, it feels a lot like the Steelers are probably going to take a look at free agency, see if they can find another quarterback. And if they can't, come back with the same situation they have this year with Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. And as I said yesterday, if they lose tomorrow, it almost feels like they've wasted a year of Justin Fields. They could have spent 17 games really figuring out what they have in him. As opposed to trying to go win with Russell Wilson and then it doesn't happen. So there's that. I think Baltimore losing Zay Flowers, that's a big loss for them. I don't know that people really fully understand how important he is to what they do. Obviously they've got other weapons, starting with the quarterback who's, the ultimate weapon in the NFL. But at the end of the day, the thing about a guy like Zay Flowers is he gives them something they don't really have. He changes the game for them. He's a guy who really is a game-changing type player. And so, to me, when you take away what he's done for them, at 14.3 yards per catch, 1,059 yards, that's a big weapon that you take out of their arsenal. So, all of that, again, leads me to believe that probably the Steelers are going to be in this game. I just don't know if they're going to have enough to get over the top and win, especially down in Baltimore. I was reading a story today, the last time they played in Baltimore, they played against the Colts. It was the last time they played in Baltimore in a playoff game, which is one of those strange things. As much as we talk about the Steelers and the Ravens being in a rivalry, they haven't played a ton of playoff games against each other, and they haven't played any playoff games in Baltimore. That's one of the weirdest stats about tomorrow's game. It's the first time the Steelers have played the Ravens in Baltimore in a playoff game. So, as I've said before, I think that when we talk about this game, this season, again, if they win, obviously Monday is going to be a different kind of show. But if they lose, that's when we'll start to talk about what it means in the big picture. But I think a lot of people don't quite understand that if they win, a lot of the narratives that they want to build about Mike Tomlin, about Russell Wilson, about a lot of them go away. So, there's no reason to talk about these things until we see what happens over the weekend. And I think that's going to be the key. It really is going to be the key is if it's going to be, this thing where the Steelers lose, well, then all of those discussions we can really legitimately have. But there's no reason to have it now because they could win. I know I'm in a minority when I say that, but they could actually win the game. First of all, it's a playoff game, and one of the things about the NFL playoffs is that really, in some ways, it's the opposite of college. In the college playoffs and in bowl games and in postseason and whatnot, in college, they throw caution to the wind and they just go out and they try and win a game, and they try and throw everything they have at the other team, and you see trick plays and you see going for it on fourth down, and you see all kinds of crazy stuff, fake punts, all that stuff. In the NFL, these coaches get very, very conservative in these playoff games. They've convinced themselves that, well, all year long we've done it this way. So, we've got to make sure that we don't turn the ball over, because if we turn the ball over, then we're going to lose the game. If we, put ourselves in a bad situation, then we're going to lose the game. So you really see a lot of these teams play it straight. Honestly, they always do. And so I think that's the most, interesting thing to me about the whole situation is that it's going to be a very conservative game plan in so many ways. It's going to be a very conservative game plan, I think, for both teams. In fact, I would be willing to bet this. I would be willing to bet that that I would be willing to bet that if you think about it, we're probably talking about a situation of where we're probably talking about a situation of where I think that, let's try this. Can you see me now? No, I don't know. Can you see me now? I don't know what's going on here with this today. This is really just starting to irritate the hell out of me. But anyway, I think it's important to note that it really is, that this is one of those things where this is one of those situations where coaches get really conservative. They really try and get to a point where they are, just trying to do the things they used to do in the old days with the NFL, where you play conservative and you run the ball and you punt and you kick field goals. So 9.5 is a ton. That's a ton of points in a playoff game in the NFL. That's all I'm going to tell you. I really think that it's just a situation of where I feel like I don't know. I've had a number of people tell me I'm crazy when I say I love the 9.5. I think it's just a lot of points for the as the Steelers. So it is one of those situations where there's a number of games this week, and I think that are intriguing. Not just the Steeler game. Right before the Steeler game, you know what? It's the Texans and the Chargers. The Chargers are actually favored in that game. The Chargers are actually favored in that game. And so I think that when you look at, that game, you say to yourself, why are they favored? They're on the road against Houston, and Houston I don't think is that bad. Now I got some noise coming out of my computer. This is one of those days where it's just not going to work, I don't think. It really is not going to work for me. Anyway, I like the Chargers to work. I like the Chargers to win the game, to be honest. But I'm just wondering why on the road they're favored. I do like the Eagles to win their game against the Packers. I think Buffalo beats the Broncos pretty easily. The intriguing game to me is Tampa, Washington. It's in Tampa, which I assume it's going to be pretty good weather. If it is, I think it's a fast track, and I think there could be a lot of points in that game. And so the Vikings-Rams game, I know there were a lot of people that are picking the Rams in that game. I don't know. I watched the Rams a bunch this year. I just don't think they're that good. I think that, Sean McVay is a wizard or whatever you want to say, but I think the Vikings will find a way to win that game. So that's what I think about, the games as we go forward. But for the Steelers, one of the things is if they lose tomorrow, again, it doesn't really – we'll have this conversation on Monday, but it feels like there's going to have to be some changes made. And no, we're not talking about the big change. That's not going to happen. At the end of the day, it's going to be a situation of where there will be a sacrificial lamb, and my guess is it'll be someone like Terrell Austin, right? Because they just brought the other guy here. They just brought Arthur Smith here. Somebody will have to take the fall. And they just brought Arthur Smith here and spent the whole year telling us how great he is. So I don't think it would be him. Terrell Austin, to me, I think is a really good football coach. I hope I'm not right when I say this, but it feels like if they lose, Mike Tomlin is going to have to basically, do something to make a change. And I just feel that's the biggest thing that's going to happen. I really do. So either way, it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens going forward. But again, that's the conversation for Monday. Right now, the bottom line is the Steelers are still alive and they still have a chance. So there's no reason to have that conversation. Tonight we've got Ohio State playing against Texas. It's another one of these games. Everybody's picking Ohio State to win and win going away. Texas has got a pretty good defense. I feel like if Ohio State plays their A game, they're the best team left. But we've seen they don't always play their A game. And I'll give you one thing, one word of caution. If you're going to jump all over Ohio State, here's one word of caution. Texas's defense is a lot like Michigan's. They're really physical at the point of attack. They're physical. Their defensive line is really good. Their front seven is really good. They can give a lot of headaches to Ohio State's offense, much like Michigan does. And so if Ohio State does what they did last game, where they, spread the ball around and just throw it down the field because they've got great receivers, I think they'll have an opportunity maybe to make some plays and maybe win and be comfortable covering the spread. But boy, if they try and run at Texas or they're not able to, block Texas up front, it could be a really ugly game. And I think if it's an ugly game, that probably favors Texas. So I'm not even going to make a pick for the game. I'm just telling you, I hear a lot of people basically make it seem like Ohio State's going to win and win going away and everything else. But I would be very, very, very careful to jump all over Ohio State because I just don't think that they're going to be able to handle the front seven of Texas. I think Ohio State will win, but I think it's going to be tougher than people think. Last night, obviously Penn State lost to Notre Dame. Notre Dame made enough plays to win. They were physical. They were smart. I thought Penn State played a stupid game. I thought the quarterback was bad, and that's pretty much the story of the game. It felt to me like Penn State was doing a pretty good job of moving the ball, but then they started getting into this thing where they were dropping back too much. I felt like, I felt like that was really the difference, especially since the quarterback just didn't play very well. Now, I'm not blaming him. I'm not saying it's all his fault, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that want to jump on James Franklin. The reality of the situation is that James Franklin really, I thought the coaching was fine. The game day coaching was fine. Trying to score a touchdown or trying to get in field goal range at the end, I had no problem with that when they threw the interception and ended up ultimately costing them the game. I have no problem with that. That was the quarterback making a bad play. But when I look at the college football playoff, I thought the two best teams left were Ohio State and Penn State. I still think that, actually. But Notre Dame played better. And in a close playoff game, the team that plays better is going to win. And I think that's something also maybe to look at for tomorrow with the Steelers. If the Steelers play better than the Ravens, they can win the game. The other thing is if the Steelers get an early lead of some sort, or they're able to get up and dictate some things of some sort, and force now the Ravens to get out of their comfort zone, I think it could be really interesting to see if the Ravens can chase them down and catch them. But that all happens tomorrow. And again, I think that if you're going to, write the Steelers off and, fire everybody, all that other stuff that we hear people doing, if you're going to do all that stuff, guess what? You're going to spend a lot of energy unnecessarily right now because they could win the game tomorrow. And then if they do, none of that stuff matters. None of it matters. And that's what I got to be honest with you. That's why I haven't spent a lot of time this week talking about the ramifications of what if they lose and what could happen down the road if they lose and all this other stuff, because they haven't lost yet. Again, I'll just say this. 9.5 points is way too many points, period. The game is always on at Archie's. Get down to Archie's on Carson Street. Archie's is the home of 80-cent wings Monday through Thursday, home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. And also, it is a place where you can watch all of the games all weekend long, and you can make sure that you see them Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Archie will be open. He'll be open from, the beginning of the first game till the end of the second game. And, of course, Pitt has a big, huge home game tomorrow as well against Louisville. We'll talk some Pitt hoops next week, but that's a big game for them, coming off a blowout loss to Duke. It's a huge game for them. And so we've got a lot to get to. Don't forget, Adam and I will be here tomorrow doing the post-game show as soon as the Steeler game is over. You can jump on the YouTube channel with us, and we will break it all down, win or lose. Until then, enjoy your weekend.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.